Joel Rosenberg is someone who needs no introduction for many of our readers, but for those who haven't encountered him yet, he is the multi-best-selling author of fiction that reads like a newspaper. It almost predicts world events, and he is also a very astute observer of the scene in Israel, running both all Israel News and other websites. He does the Rosenberg Report for TBN that you can view every week. And he's forgotten more than I'll ever know about most of these subjects. Joel, welcome. Thank you for your time. And tell me, what is it like on the ground in Israel now as we begin Passover, not only the Feast of Unleavened Bread, but also the feast marking liberation of the Hebrew slaves from captivity in Egypt?
Well, it's great to be with you, Mark. Thank you so much to you and the Washington Times for keeping an eye on this. Not all U.S. media are doing that. But look, it's a surreal moment because, all Israelis, all Jews worldwide, but certainly here in Israel, are celebrating God's mercy to us when he rescued us from the tyranny of an Egyptian dictator, right? In the Exodus thousands of years ago. Now we are praying for God to rescue us from the tyranny of an Iranian dictator. We have just been the subject of attack by the Iranian regime for the first time in almost 76 years of the modern state of Israel. The Iranian regime has never directly attacked Israel from Iranian soil. Iran's regime has always used terror proxies to attack us, such as Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and others. But this is the first time, just about 10 days ago, where Iran directly stepped out of the shadows and fired 320 ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and suicide drones at Israel. I live in Jerusalem, as you mentioned, and I saw the missiles and drones streaking over Jordan, coming from the east into Israeli airspace. Yes, 99% were shot down, but many got through, and I saw it with my own eyes, and I saw some of the intercepts. So it's a very dangerous and tense time here. Because Iran has been attacking us for decades, certainly through their proxies for the last 6 months. But now they've stepped forward and changed the rules again, and Israel had to retaliate. But the chance of an apocalyptic missile war between Israel, Iran, and Iran's terror proxies is as high as it has ever been.
What does that do to people's attitudes? What do your neighbors, your friends tell you about how they're feeling in the midst of all this?
It's a great question, Mark, because Israelis live like they're in a Far Side cartoon. You may recall back the Gary Larson cartoons back from the 80s and 90s, where there's, and one of my favorites is that two deer are standing in the forest, and one has a bullseye on his chest, and the deer without the bullseye says to the deer with the bullseye, "Bummer of a birthmark, Hal." And so Israelis, Jews generally, and Israelis in particular, we know we've been born with a bullseye on our chest, and so we don't like it. And I'm not saying we're used to it, but we have a lot of experience with people trying to kill us. And so there is a general view in Israel that, look, if they didn't kill us today, then you got to go live, because God only knows, right, what tomorrow holds. And to some degree, that's a healthy attitude. And we've learned to live it. I've been coming back and forth to Israel for 37 years.
Right.
But we've lived here, my wife and I and some of our sons, as dual citizens for 10 years. And we've been through a lot of rocket and missile wars. And I wouldn't say we're used to it, but I say we have a lot of experience with it. So, in other words, my point is that at the big picture, militarily, we're on high alert. Geopolitically, we are on high alert. There's a real risk that this thing is going to go sideways, much worse than anything over the last 6 months, very, very fast. But today, people are barbecuing. They're at the beach. They're like, look, God only knows what, and even that's if they even believe in God. God only knows what tomorrow holds. So let's enjoy today. It's a day off here. It's a national holiday, the first day of Passover, and so
Right.
so two things are true at once. It is the darkest hour that Israel has ever been in since 1948 and the year and a half long War of Independence, and yet today things are calm. So people are somewhat relaxed. But look, Israelis are struggling with mental health issues. They're dealing with, severe anxiety, and they're trying to manage all that. And those who have faith in the God of Israel that loves them and cares for them and will never sleep or slumber, have more peace. That's certainly my family. We are Jewish, but also followers of Jesus as the Messiah, and so we have peace that passes all understanding. Not everybody has that. Most people don't. So some of it's just sort of existential, like, well, let's not think about that today. Okay, that's not unhealthy necessarily, but it doesn't mean that it's coming from a place of deep faith. It may just be coming from, who knows? Let's just enjoy today while we have it. So it's a complicated environment here.
Well, to say the least, and I certainly understand that. But you mentioned that many Israelis, if not most, are essentially secular, let's say. They're not observant. There are observant Jews in Israel, of course. But a lot of Israelis, as you say, they're out barbecuing. They're at the beach today. It is a holiday observance and not one where they're spending time in synagogue or shul, as it's called, praying. Has this crisis and, frankly, the situation in Israel since October 7th, when Hamas terrorists staged their incursion into southern Israel, has this changed the spiritual dynamic at all? Are there perhaps secular Jews and other Jews in Israel who are asking spiritual questions and trying to find answers larger than the ones they've had?
That's a great question, Mark. And the answer is yes. I think that October 7th, it was not just an incursion, it was an outright invasion. 1,200 Jews were murdered in one day, the single biggest death toll of Jews since the Holocaust in terms of one-day tally. Right. Jews were raped, people were beheaded, people were burned alive in their homes. So this rattled Israel to our core. I believe, as a Bible believer, that this comes right out of Amos, the Hebrew prophet Amos, chapter 9, verse 9, where God says in the future, in the end days, he says, I will shake the whole house of Israel. The house of Israel was shaken very badly on the 7th of October and every day since. We've got still 133 hostages trapped in those tunnels. Our prayer is, let my people go. Right, that we're praying that God would force the Pharaoh of Hamas to let all of these people go. It hasn't happened yet. So, yes, anecdotally, I can tell you from crisscrossing this country from north to south and east to west, I am hearing hundreds of examples from pastors, from ministry leaders, as well as, Christian and Messianic pastors and ministry leaders, but also from rabbis and from secular people. People are asking questions. Is there a God? Does he love us? Can he be trusted? And will he show us a way out of this? And I think that is a healthy reaction. Now, we are also seeing some religious Jews, I know them personally, some of them, who are so angry at what happened on the 7th that they feel like it's a betrayal. And they're questioning if God is really real. Why would he let this happen? If you're the God of Israel, if you're neither slumbering or sleeping, where were you on October 7th? But I know secular Israelis who realize, maybe, they don't use this language, but I would say that they're essentially saying, if you put it in biblical language, we are sheep and we were abandoned. We sort of ignored our shepherd, and we got attacked by savage wolves. Well, maybe, I mean, it was Hamas's fault, but maybe at some level we bear responsibility for wandering away from the God who is our shepherd that King David told us in Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. So if you just wander away from the shepherd and think there isn't even a shepherd, and you forget that there are ravenous beasts and savage wolves out there to destroy you, how can you expect that shepherd to, in fact, protect you if you don't even care about him at all? And I think that process of wrestling through is going in two different directions. Some religious people are angry and saying, God abandoned us, or maybe he's not even there. And secular people are like, we abandoned God. Maybe he is there, and it's our fault that, again, not that we got attacked, but that we were not under his care and keeping. So when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we are fearing evil because we don't have confidence that we know the shepherd personally and he knows us, and his rod and his staff comfort us and protect us. So that's a very interesting and I think game-changing discussion and dynamic that's going on inside Israel now. It's gotten almost no coverage in the mainstream secular media. I've been covering it at All Israel News, our news site at allisrael.com, and I've been talking about it on my TBN primetime show on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern called the Rosenberg Report. But outside of that, there's been very little discussion. Although there was one poll taken and reported by the Jerusalem Post a few months ago that sort of gave some indications of this cross current. But other than that, I haven't really seen much secular reporting about this.
Well, it's a fascinating subject, and one that I'll try to dive into a little bit more. What can people who are friends of Israel in the United States do right now to be helpful in the situation?
Yeah. Well, again, I think that first is to recognize that Israel has been shaken to its core, and that, if there's a headline, it's something to the effect of Israelis, under attack from all directions, searching for God, or maybe it's even secular Israelis attacked from under all directions are searching for God, perhaps for the first time. I think that's the big takeaway. So Christians ought to be praying continually for us, not just for security, yes, and definitely for the immediate release of all the hostages. 133. We're at day 200, I believe, right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's so. It's critical to get these people out. We also need to pray for complete victory over Hamas in Gaza, and for wisdom to know how to nurture this U.S. European Sunni Arab alliance that helped shoot down 99% of the Iranian missiles and suicide drones that were fired at us. That was a very positive development. And how can we work closer with these countries over time? Now, I would add that Christians ought to be praying also for the hearts and the souls of Israelis, both Jews and Arabs, and of course Palestinian Arabs, that we do all seek to know the Lord, that we open up our Bibles and start to say, all right, Lord, who are you? What did you promise us? What are your expectations of us? And how can we know you personally? Because it's not a good idea to be Jewish in this world, or anybody else, and wander around in a dangerous, evil world without a personal relationship with the God who made us and has a plan for our lives. And so I think praying not just for physical peace and security, but a spiritual hunger would grow inside Israelis and Palestinians. In fact, one of my prayers, Mark, is that the 2.2 million Palestinians in Gaza would ask themselves the serious question: has radical Islam helped us? Has Islam helped us? Or is it leading us into very dangerous and self-destructive behaviors. And maybe we as Palestinian Muslims ought to abandon Islam and consider whether the God of the Bible is in fact the one true God.
That would make sense. Are you getting any indications? Because through your charity, the Joshua Fund, you work across lines and you work with Arabs and Palestinian Arabs and people of all sorts in the region. Are you getting any indications that Palestinian Arabs, especially in Gaza, are perhaps questioning their orientation? Spiritual orientation.
From some, but I think it's too early to say because I was just in Gaza. I was embedded as a journalist in an IDF unit, the 98th Division. I went into Khan Yunis and was reporting there. But I can tell you the devastation in Gaza is so bad. What the Hamas attack on Israel, which is constant, not just on the 7th, but I mean missiles and attacks constantly, have brought such a level of destruction by the Israeli army trying to, root out Hamas, root and branch, that it's very hard to get an accurate read on how people are feeling, what they're saying. I would significantly discount almost any poll that's coming out right now out of Gaza because there's just massive dislocation. So I think it's going to take some time for the smoke to clear, literally and figuratively. But we have seen in other places when people are engaged in radical Islamism, violent radical Islamism, that when they start to be defeated, the culture starts to rethink. We've seen that in some places. We see that certainly in Iran. The dynamic in Iran is so fascinating. I just interviewed the man that I call the Billy Graham of Iran on my TBN show, the Rosenberg Report. That's Dr. Hormoz Shariat. I encourage you to talk to him because he's a former Muslim intellectual raised in Tehran who escaped from that whole horrible culture, came to faith in Jesus Christ in the United States, and over time began to broadcast the gospel and Bible teaching back into Iran on the leading satellite television network that he and his wife and his team built. They argue that the effect of radical Islamism inside the Iranian society post 1979 and the Iranian Revolution caused millions and millions, tens of millions in their view, to leave Islam. Now, not all have come to faith in Jesus Christ, but Hormoz Shariat believes several million Iranian Shia Muslims have not only left Islam, but come to faith in Jesus Christ inside Iran, even though it's illegal to do so. His argument is that still more tens of millions have rejected Islam, but aren't quite sure what they believe now. Some are atheists, some are agnostic, some are going back to Zoroastrianism and sort of pre-Islamic Iranian society. But the point being that the pressure cooker that is the Iranian society, 80 million people, has been put under such pressure. They've seen radical Islamism played out so perfectly, in a sense, the way it's supposed to be, and people are like, if that's it, I'm out. And so that is something that, again, most Western secular media are not picking up, that the Iranian revolution that's cooking underneath the regime, yes, for democracy, but also for get out of our face in terms of your wicked, corrupt brand of religion. We don't buy it. We're not doing it. We're out. And give us the freedom to look for what's true. That is the most dramatic example on the planet. And I find myself as a Jew quite jealous that God is drawing more Iranians out of Islam and into faith in Jesus, the Messiah, than Jews for whom Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. And we haven't seen that the same level. But we are seeing more Jews than ever come to faith in Jesus, not here in Israel so much, but in the United States. And we put out a study several years ago that we did with the Southern Baptist Convention. Very interesting. Where in 1967, for example, when I was born, there were fewer than 2,000 Jews on planet Earth who believed that Jesus is, in fact, the Messiah prophesied by the Hebrew prophets. Fewer than 2,000. But 57 years later, we're at almost 1 million worldwide, 871,000 in the United States alone. Now, that's a headline that, again, it's been out for several years. I've reported on it, but we're not seeing people pick up on the fact that, wow, in the United States, almost 900,000 Jews have become evangelical, born-again followers of Jesus Christ. What is happening? What's causing that? That's a whole conversation in unto itself. But the point is, both in the Muslim culture and in the Jewish culture, there's a lot of ferment as people are rethinking what they were taught and sort of asking questions that maybe they never asked before. And many of them, not all, but many are going to the Bible, both Old Testament and New, looking hungrily for answers.
Well, Joel, speaking of questions, I could go on with a ton of them, but I realize that you've got things to do. And as you say, today is a national holiday, and I should let you enjoy that. Thank you for
honored
speaking
to talk to you, as always, Mark. Thank you.
And the best to you and your family, especially during these stressful times.
Thank you. It's great to be with you and your audience. Appreciate you and the work that the Washington Times does.
Well, thank you kindly. We'll catch up later, and be well.